Hello, world. It's Lee Kelson coming to you from our Fire Connect studio here in Queensland, Australia. And I am joined by entrepreneur extraordinaire, investor, venture capitalist, and now CEO of Immersion. Right? You're going to tell us a
That
little
is
bit about
true.
that.
Yeah.
Scott Brown, also best-selling author. One of my favorite books. My green screen doesn't like it, but there it is. Lean, Clean Messaging. And we're going to talk about clean messaging. That's my go-to. I was just saying to you earlier.
I
Scott.
love it. Thank you so much for the call today in the chat. It's so great to see you again.
It's good to see you, mate. The last time I think we had dinner together at Peregian Beach.
That's right. Yeah, I love that place. I don't
That
know
was
why you don't invite me back.
well, because there's a pandemic. Have you heard? There's this
Oh yeah.
virus going around.
Oh yeah. That's right. I don't know about you, but this is my first global pandemic, so I don't know all the rules yet.
I don't know all the rules either, you know. But I wake up every morning and I say to my wife, "Did you hear there's some sort of virus going around?"
Oh man, it is crazy. It's like a sci-fi movie out here. It's just
Yeah.
strange. I don't even know how to respond to it.
So you're based in Boulder.
Beautiful Boulder, Colorado. That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. One of my favorite places. So Scott, you've had a pretty interesting life, and you've done some pretty amazing things around the tech space. But I think probably one of the most interesting is the bacon wrapped tot. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think this is true. I am claiming, at least, to be the inventor of the bacon wrapped tater tot, which is a little bit of fried potato, looks like a barrel, like hash browned potatoes squished into a barrel-sized bite, wrapped in bacon and deep fried. It is a little morsel of goodness that if you haven't tried one, you haven't lived.
Okay. So how did that sort of come about? Were you just experimenting in your
Yeah.
kitchen?
Well, I was out for a dinner with a bunch of startups. I think we had 4 or 5 startups in town, and so I took everybody out to a nice dinner at a little place just outside of Boulder here. And it was late. We'd had a few drinks, I'll be honest. And as we were running through the tapas and the appetizers, things were looking a little grim. And so I asked the waiter if they could make a bacon wrapped tot for me. And they stopped. And well, I don't know. We'll go check. And they went back into the back room and then just disappeared. Right? They didn't come back from the kitchen. About 12 minutes later, they brought a little plate of bacon wrapped deep fried tater tots for us. And now it is on the secret menu at the restaurant. It's only about 1.5 miles from where I live now. And it's called the Scott. So when you come to Boulder, order a Scott.
Okay, I will do. So on a more serious note, you are a fairly prolific investor. Based out of Boulder. Boulder is, renowned for one of the hotspots in terms of ecosystem. And, people like Brad Felds, who's famously written the book Communities. I've had the benefit of having gone to Boulder a number of times. I love it. I have to say, I like the dispensaries.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
No, I can imagine not. But you are now working for a company called Immersion. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. I was lucky enough about 1.5 years or so ago to meet a guy named Paul Zak, who is the leading scientist and researcher in neuroscience, neuroeconomics in the world. And I had used a bunch of his research in clean messaging as I was writing the book and trying to figure out how to help founders talk to humans in a way that made sense and held their story together. And I had used a lot of Paul's research in that process. And I met him finally, and he started to tell me about this small little consulting business he had built based on the technology he'd been working on for 20 years. He found a way to measure what people love directly from the brain using a simple wearable like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or a fitness sensor that you would find on Amazon.
Wow.
Backed originally by DARPA and the CIA, and now the largest media companies in the world use immersion to help predict things like hit movies and TV shows and movie trailers and music, and identify ads that are going to sell or content that will be the most compelling content in the world. And so I came on board back in November as CEO to help transition the company from more of a consulting business into a true software platform. I'm happy to say things are going really well. It's been fun to be back on this side of the table again, operating.
Right. And prior to that, you were with UpRamp, which was an accelerator around the cable industry.
Yeah. Yeah, we had built a program for early stage venture investing and acceleration for companies coming up into the 61 largest broadband operators in the world. So it was really all about helping people find deals and not demo days.
Right. So one of my favorite topics. So part of what we're doing with FireTech Connect is how do we create deal flow? So how do we, number one, help develop the commercial capability of the early stage companies? And then also from the, the buy side, how do we reduce the friction, remove some of the bureaucratic inertia? How do we move from buckets and fire hoses and start using some of the technology? But one of my pet hates and that we share is this idea that we arm people with a pitch deck and push them out there to pitch investors. And I've always been a bit curious as to why don't we use and put all that effort into helping them get a customer?
Ain't that the truth? The best money is customer money, right? And so if you have a chance to focus on customers first, you really should. Too often at the early stage, especially first-time founders, they think that they win when they sell a part of their company to a venture investor. But really, that's the beginning of a journey. It's certainly not the end. And oftentimes, especially right now in the middle of this new normal, it's probably easier to get great customers than it is to find a Series A investor.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things I find with some of these early companies is that normally they're saying, look, we're struggling with hiring staff and we're struggling with, trying to find customers. And, we've got these customers we bought on and they're unhappy because our tech's not working. And they've got all these sort of problems around, what I broadly term is people problems, customers. And, I say, wouldn't life be easier if we didn't, in business be easier if we didn't have, customers and employees?
Right. There's always a people problem at the end of the day.
That's right. But then, the interesting point is, if you think it's hard now with those two dynamics, bring in a third one of an investor. It really, you're selling off part of the farm and you're bringing in somebody else that, irrespective of whether they promise they're not going to have influence, ultimately they got skin in the game, right?
Yeah, that's right. And, it's probably easier now. There's a lot more information out there about what it means to be a venture-backed startup founder today. Certainly more than there was 20 odd years ago when I did my first venture-backed company. Back then, I believed that my investors were truly on my side, right? That it was all about us changing the world together. And I forgot that there were different dynamics at play. Forgot or didn't know. And so today, I think there's a lot more available information for a founder to really be able to judge. Are they scalable as a venture-backed company? Is venture the right path right now? Would you be better off bootstrapping and building more customer traction before you go that route? So a lot of good information out there now.
Yeah, one of my great mentors used to say that this sort of belief about bringing capital in. All I need to do is raise some money, and I've raised a bit of money in my time, and I can tell you all it does is complicate your life.
Right.
That early morning call where you see the investor's name pop up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you've got to deal with that shit. Right? So,
Yeah.
but he used to say, you know what, you're going to do the pain. You're going to do the pain before, or you're going to do the pain after. But one way or the other, you're going to do the pain, right?
Yeah.
And I suppose essentially what he was saying was that if you think that that's going to solve all your problems, if you don't have customers and you're going to bring investment in, you're still going to have to get the customers one way or the other.
That's right. Yeah. And you're just moving the problem, right?
Right.
Yeah, because eventually you've got to figure out how to get product market fit and how to scale your business. And only now you've set yourself up with a runway and a place where that runway ends. And so you better know what you're doing.
So I think with the interesting time around the virus, and I've had like you, we've sort of been through some crises in the past with .com crashes and all these types of things, but nothing to this extent. And a couple of companies that I've had conversations with have raised a little bit of money. And they're scaling, and I had an experience where we had an oil and gas software technology, and the oil price crashed in 2014-15, right?
Yeah.
And it was this idea that we're sort of we've got the foot on the accelerator and we're scaling into the shitstorm.
Right.
And you don't know when that storm's going to end. You don't know how bad it's going to get. You don't know whether it's going to get worse or better or whatever. What's your advice to people that have got a bit of cash and they are in this environment and they have the foot on the pedal? Do they take the foot off? Do they? I mean, what do they do? Conserve cash, keep scaling, scale it back a little bit, dial it up, dial it down.
There is no one answer for that. I think every company is going to be a little bit different. Now is actually a really interesting time to be able to grow into a market because many of the large companies and many of those competitors that might be out there for your business are stagnating or stale or worried or can't afford to move faster. So you may have a great opportunity to capture market share. I'll give you an example. We're in that situation right now. Because we operate in this world of neuroscience has historically only ever happened in a lab. You had to recruit human beings and bring them into a lab environment, slide them into a giant magnetic tube called an MRI machine. Now, we can't do that anymore in this COVID-19 world. So all of the companies that relied on neuroscience as a consulting business or MRI or EEG technology, they're all stuck because there's no way they can operate. For us, because we have this true distributed neuroscience solution, we can work with an Apple Watch anywhere, anytime. We've found this great opportunity to actually scale and grab market share like you wouldn't believe. So we're growing like gangbusters right now, having a crazy fun time, even though the world is in chaos. So it really depends on your business. Where are you right now? What is your competitive dynamic? And what kind of cash do you have in the bank to be able to grow fast enough?
Yeah, so I think, we hear this term pivot, it seems to be the buzz term, hustle, pivot, all that stuff,
right.
whatever.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah.
And I think there's, from my mind, there's pivoting your product, but then you can also pivot your market as well.
Sure.
I mentioned I was talking to Guy Kawasaki yesterday, and he's got this theory of therefore what, right? And I just love that concept because it is this idea of, we are seeing a huge growth in e-learning, right? We've been growing e-learning for a period of time, but now all of a sudden we've got this spike, right? And is it a temporal demand spike, or are we going to see some continuity of that? E-commerce, gangbusters. I mean, how would you be sitting on Amazon now, right? And then there's, and you know, the remote working, the whole idea that people are now, and companies are looking, saying, hey, we're actually still productive here. This is working okay. Obviously, there's some white collars that can work from home, others can't. But so all of these trends, and you know, Guy's comment is, therefore what? You know,
Yeah.
what opportunities does that open up for us? And it's almost like a mindset of thinking.
Yes, that's really right. You know, I've got a amazing mentor and friend of mine who taught me this one. He said, "This being so, so what?"
Right.
And I find myself saying that over and over again, in times of crisis and times of happiness and joy, right? This being so, so what?
Yeah.
What does that mean? What's the next incantation or version of this? What does that mean going forward? What am I going to do about it because this is so? It's a great way to look at life and to pinpoint where those next opportunities are, or how am I going to respond to, you know, global pandemic.
Yeah, so I found an interesting article this morning in The Economist about, I think it was in 1815, or I can't remember the time, but there was a huge a volcanic eruption in Indonesia, and it blanketed all the agricultural fields, and it killed a lot of the horses, which was their, you know, horse locomotion, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And out of that emerged a contraption that enabled them to move around. It was called the bicycle.
Really?
So the article says, could be fake news.
I'm an American. I'm used to that.
But that to me was that example of therefore what? You know, what does this mean for me? And I think, again, a lot of early stage companies tend to be very myopic of looking at what's happening in their world, but raising the gaze and getting out of the weeds and looking around and saying, okay, what's happening here? You know, what's happening with supply chains in China? Right, that's going to have a huge impact in my view.
Sure.
So we're already seeing Japan starting to pull out of manufacturing in China and paying to bring their companies back. We're seeing around the world, you're seeing Germany, Australia, there's talk about opening our manufacturing industry again. So we've sort of learned the lesson of having all of our eggs in one basket at the benefit of low cost production and distribution. But are we sort of potentially going to be prepared to pay a little bit more and to bring some of our manufacturing? I think there's also discussions around that in the US.
Yeah, for sure. And in media, it's been a big topic right now. You know, most or all media production is shut down right now. And so this being so what? What are we going to do about that? Because obviously we have to create new movies and content and TV shows. And, you know, Netflix can't survive on reruns of The Office forever. There's got to be a way to build new stuff. And so how do you respond to that? And we're seeing the leaders in the media and entertainment business coming together, trying to craft new platforms and rules and ways to actually create content in either a distributed fashion or to create safe environments in which, you know, the catering is gone and you have all of the health checks in line and ways to still have a soundstage and create content in this new normal. Yeah.
It's another great example. So, you know, therefore what? What's your expression? This being so.
So what?
So what? Yeah, perfect. So I do want to talk to you about clean, lean messaging. I know I saw a presentation. I don't know whether you've got the presentation handy there, but be great to share the screen and actually go through that and talk about some of that. Because I think, as I said, it's one of my go-to books now since you since you generously gave it to me. I know my green screen, but there it is, clean messaging. And, you know, we hear about elevator pitches and everything else, but this is really about a framework to help, I suppose, more over technical founders. You know, I talk to a lot of technical founders and they bombard me with the technical jargon and they're very excited and enthusiastic about their product, and that's great. But I'm 10 minutes into that and I still have no idea what they do. I still have no idea what their value is.
Sure.
And this to me is just an awesome framework for people to get their head around.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny. I spent a long time, many, many years, mentoring other startup founders to help them figure out how to talk to humans. And I found myself saying the same things over and over again, telling the same stories, teaching the same lessons, going back to kind of the same bits of a story. And finally, I said, we ought to just put this together in a framework that allows a startup founder at whatever stage they're at to really put it into a workflow and figure out the right way to talk to real people. Eric Ries, the lean startup, Eric Ries, who I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Great guy, amazing guy. His lean startup, build, measure, iterate, it changed the way we build startups today. We're 10 years on now since that first came out. And there's not a startup around today that doesn't build that lean canvas and work off of that model. And they do the value prop canvas. They work through all of those things to try to figure out what to build and who to build it for. I don't know how many times I've talked to somebody who said, we're doing customer discovery. We're getting out of the office, right? Good on you. That's great. But what happens, right? We go out and we talk to a human, someone that we think might be a customer, and we ask them a few pointed questions, and they tell us all the features they need to solve this particular problem. It's got to be AI and machine learning and SaaS and PaaS and Kubernetes and Mongo and AR, VR, MR. I mean, pick the acronym. And customers love to talk about all that shit. And so they'll give you all of this great stuff. And as a founder builder, we love that. Right? We take all that stuff, we go back to the office, we build all of that stuff with all those crazy features that those first customers said that they needed. And then we go out to the real world and we find 2 or 3 people that we think might be a customer. And what do? We repeat back everything we learned in customer discovery. Right? Oh, look what I've built. It's this amazing thing that's Kubernetes, SaaS, Mongo, AR, VR, ML, AI. Right? And the customer doesn't give a shit. They don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Customers don't care about your business. They're not there talking to you because they want something, right? They are there to find out if what you have is important to them.
Yeah.
They're not there because of you, right? And that's what startup founders too often forget. It's really hard to build a business. It's really hard. And we put our blood, sweat, and tears into it. But once you go out and talk to another human being, it's no longer about you. It's not your story anymore. It's what can you do for that other person?
Yeah.
And that's what clean messaging is all about. It's this awesome little framework to help other people understand what it is you really do. And I'd be happy to share a screen here. And
let's do it. Let's do it.
Can we do it? We'll share a few pictures. Let me see what I can pull up. Let's see. Let's do. Well, you know what I'm going to do firstly? I'm going to shut down all of my Slack and email notifications and all of that stuff. I've been on those calls before, right?
Yeah, I think I've still got it. I think I've still got room to open a few more browser tabs.
All right. So here's the thing: telling your story right now is more important than ever, right? Especially with fire tech and what you guys are doing down there. All these amazing startup founders, you're going to go out and start talking to venture guys, right?
Yeah.
All those people in the Patagonia vests, podcasters, media, things just like this, right? The press, they have to be able to understand your story. And frankly, your mom has got to be able to understand what it is you do.
Yeah.
And so finding a way to pull this story together is the most critical thing you need to do. Here's a company I know. Real company. If you ask this particular founder what they do.
Were you supposed to be seeing a slide here? Because all I can see is a white screen at the moment.
Oh, hold on. on here. Let me see. I'm going to take this guy and try one more time. Go back to Zoom and share desktop.
Aha.
How's that?
Yeah, now we're cooking.
Now we got it.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Here's
here
my
now
guy
we are
for
cooking.
Yeah.
Right.
So, actual founder, if you ask this guy what he does, he will tell you. At Cookie, we sell small cakes made from stiff, sweet dough, rolled and sliced and dropped by spoonfuls on a pan and baked. What? I mean, so yes, that's true, right? That is exactly what they do. That is the recipe for how to duplicate his business. And as a technical founder, that's the number one flaw that people have. If somebody says, hey, what are you working on? What do you do for a living? What's your business about? You tell them how to replicate your business. All the features, right?
Yeah.
The other co-founder, if you ask her, at Cookie, we sell portable desserts in convenient packs of 12. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's true.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, technically, yes.
Yes.
That's right. Except it's all about her, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? That's really about what they've got. It has nothing to do with who their customer is or what the other person needs in their life.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you rather show up and when somebody says, hey, what are you working on? You could just tell them, I make majestic ass biscuits. That's what I want. Right? I will buy majestic ass biscuits all day long. That's what we're talking. It grabs your attention, right? It brings you right in. It talks about something that somebody else wants. And so my challenge to founders is really about, what if you spent the time? What if you invested in this part of your business? What if your message was as clean as your code? And that's what clean messaging is all about. It's about the listener. It's not about you. So, Lee, if you want, I can run you through the framework really quick.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's great stuff.
Cool. All right, so this looks and works just like the lean messaging, lean canvas, but we start with the listener, something about the person you're speaking to. Combine that with a simple message about what it is you do, what's the honest truth of what you're building, smash those two things together into a clean message, and back it up with some story about how a user has benefited from your product. And then you're going to support that with 2 number stories. And it's always an analogy. It's never the direct numbers, and we'll talk about why. And then you want 3 little headlines or earworms, these little things that you could say that people will repeat, right? Like, it's not about you, it's about the listener. Or what if your messaging was as clean as your code? Those types of really short, snappy one-liners that people will use as headlines and make it shareable. So when we talk about the listener, you've got to think at the most human, deep level you can, right? People don't do things because their boss told them to, right? They don't buy software because they have a budget. They're trying to solve some deep human thing. People don't buy software to send alerts about servers because they want an alert about a server. They buy that software because they want to go watch their kid play baseball, right? And so you've got to drive into that really deep human need behind what your customers are craving. As humans, we make decisions and judgments first from the emotional side. And then we find any data we can to justify the decision we've already made. And so we got to start by finding that human element. Then we got to tell them what we do, right? Start with the biggest, most important thing. What's the one clear thing that your business is trying to do? It's the one thing you want people to remember. And then cut out all the crap. Stop talking about all the, features and acronyms, right? Just use simple words. Then we're going to use that and smash it together into a clean message. And a clean message always starts with something about the listener, then something about you. And that's important because, if you ask somebody what they do, and they say, well, we do X, Y, and Z. I built a big company that does this, this, and this. Maybe it's important to you, maybe it's not. But if you start with people who have this problem, for people who are really concerned about their health and safety in the middle of a wildfire, right? We do this. Right? For I don't know, I guess I lost my analogy there for a second, but I think always remember you're going to start with the listener and then back in to what it is you do. Simple, audience-focused, bite-sized, repeatable. This clean message becomes the thing that other people talk about.
Sorry, Scott, is that sort of like, so what's in it for them? Is that the idea? One of my mentors and sales coaches used to say that people tune into WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
It's got to be simple and it's got to make my life easier. Right? It's got to appeal to me in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you start with that most human thing, then it's easy to get there most of the time because most of us share those same core human needs. And then you just fulfill that with a certain product or solution into that core human need. But people are always going to make their decision based on how it applies to them personally, not whether it's compelling technology or has great features or is 25% larger.
Or built with Python or...
Yeah, AI, ML, SaaS, Kubernetes.
Cloud, PaaS, SaaS, MaaS.
Right. Yes. Yeah. We were talking about this idea of humans and how humans make decisions. We've been, as an animal, sitting around fires telling stories for, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And a story is such a great way to kind of help somebody understand how they would react in a certain situation. It's part of the reason why stories are so compelling is that when we hear a story about someone else, our brain automatically imagines ourselves as the protagonist. So when you tell a story about how somebody else used your product, you're giving your listener a chance to imagine their life being better because of you. And you don't have to tell them how their life will be better. You just let their brain kind of flow into it. But here's the big challenge. People often, they read blogs and stuff about storytelling in business, and they start with the story and they forget about the listener and the simple message about what it is you do. So remember that this story is there to support your clean message. You can't start with the story until you understand the deep human need you're trying to solve for and what is the single most important thing about your product to solve that. Numbers are funny. There are always numbers in a business. Big, important numbers could be the size of your market or your traction or investors, whatever it is. There's big numbers about your business. But people don't remember numbers. I think the London School of Business, I think, did a big fancy study. They took 1,000 students and they showed them number statistics. 5x equals, this particular stat. And afterwards, the students could only remember about 7% of the stats that they were shown. Then they took those same numbers and put them on top of a picture, And those students were able to remember about 25, 27% of the numbers that were presented to them. But when they told that same statistic in a very short sentence of a story, those students were able to remember 65% of the stats. Yeah, it's remarkable. And so if you've got really big, important numbers for your business, the most important thing you can do is speak them in a way that will be remembered. And that means frame it in a short little analogy. Right? 5 million views doesn't mean anything, but we get a view for every time a car drives over the Golden Gate Bridge. People will remember that.
Yep.
Right? And
even if I don't know how many cars drive over the Golden Gate Bridge, I know it's a big bridge. I know there's lots of cars going over that bridge.
Yeah, that's right. Could be the Sydney Harbor Bridge. Could be any bridge, right?
Yeah.
Pick the bridge. It's a way to create the analogy, to lock it in somebody's brain. You know, oftentimes people think the job of a message or a pitch is to get somebody to write a check or to say yes. But it's not. Your job in a pitch or a great message is to be remembered. And that's about it. As a startup founder, your job is to talk to somebody so they remember you when they talk to somebody who could be a potential customer. Or when you talk to a venture investor, it's to be remembered enough that they bring you up at the next partner meeting the following Monday.
Yep.
Lastly, it's these little earworms, these great little fun one-liners that you've got to have a handful of them in your pocket.
Yeah. I call them cat videos, right?
Yes. Yeah. And, you know, as sad as it is, the world operates on clickbait, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking to a writer or a podcast host or anyone in the media, they need to have some hook they can use to drive eyeballs and clicks into their website. And if you can provide those around your business and make it easy for them to share it to their audience, then you're a step ahead. But most importantly, you want to find a way to get other people you talk to share your story. And so the more simple and clever and fun these little one-liners are, the more likely it is that the person you just met at the bar is going to tell somebody an hour later about this guy I just met who's got a business that turns acorns into gold. Oh, cool. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to meet that guy.
Yeah. Excellent.
So that's it. It turns acorns into gold.
It turns acorns into gold. I want one. Yeah. So that's fantastic, Scott. So now my homework is to go and completely rewrite all of the FireTech Connect messaging.
Yeah, man. I'm happy to help. All right.
That would be great. Hey, I can't let you go before you tell us about your Super Bowl ad. I think it was. Didn't you make the history with that ad?
Damn it! I thought we got through this without talking about that.
No, I got to find out.
It is true. You know, way back 20 years ago, had a little .com, and you know, this is .com days, and so what we needed to get were eyeballs.
Yeah.
And the money would come later. We didn't have to really worry about revenue then, right?
Yeah. No.
So we made a fateful decision in the winter of 1999 to do a Super Bowl ad in the .com Bowl of 2000, January or February of 2000.
Remember it well.
We got a great deal on it. It only cost us about $2.5 million. So that was great. And
30 seconds? Was that 30 seconds?
it was 30 seconds, yeah, in the fourth quarter. The game was
Right.
close, so
Right.
people were still there. And I remember as soon as that commercial came on, we got a flood of traffic. I mean, it was beautiful, and we got a bunch of those people to actually sign up, and we were all very excited. And then, so it must have been 2.5 months later, we had to fire 150 people and shut down the company.
Right.
So today, it is the 21st worst Super Bowl ad in history. We're on a list. Congratulations. Very exciting. It is my one hope in life, Lee, that my new work with Immersion in helping these advertisers and content creators, that I will always be the 21st worst Super Bowl ad in history, that there will never be one worse than me from here on.
Scott Brown, author of Clean Messaging. Check it out. It is fantastic. Scott, thanks for joining us today. And what a great note to leave this one on.
Such a pleasure. Great to hear your voice. Great to see you again.
Thanks, mate. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye now.